Moving on, has open borders Britain betrayed an entire generation of young Brits? Well, new research published today has shown that mass migration seems to be directly fueling the youth unemployment crisis, as migrants have snapped up 3 times as many jobs as young Britons since 2020. And let's now speak with the Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders, and that's Rico Wojtulewicz. I hope I got that right. Rico, it's a pleasure to have your company. You know, I've been charting, I think we have a graphic to put on the screen now, immigration into the United Kingdom since the 1970s. Let's get that up if we could. And we can see in the 1970s, it was practically non-existent. In fact, in the early 70s, migration was net out. And then, look, Tony Blair came into power in 1997. It went through the roof. And then it turned into a tsunami in the Conservative years, particularly under the Boris wave. And I put it to you, Rico, there's no coincidence that a generation of worklessness was because we opened our borders.
I certainly think that's a factor. But I think there is a broader issue here, and that we've had decades of anti-business governments who make it really difficult for employers to take on employees. And so when they have a choice between someone that's not as experienced or less inclined to understand that working environment and somebody who understands it and is a migrant and you have access to them, they are going to choose the person that's more suitable for the role, and that is what has happened over the last few generations. And let's be honest, it also started with Blair because he pushed qualification hierarchies and jobs over linking education and careers.
You know, Rico, I think you're exactly right. You know, don't forget, Tony Blair's key manifesto pledge was education, education, education. And as a consequence, we have now a huge oversupply of graduates, let's face it, often with Mickey Mouse degrees, and a huge amount of debt. Whereas tradesmen, builders, you know, those who can fix stuff, we can't get enough of them. And surely, Rico, we should be encouraging more people, instead of like getting paper qualifications, to get an actual trade.
Yeah, I think governments have tried to do that over the years, but because they don't understand employers, they don't understand what it takes to run a business and why you have to forward plan. You know, I was speaking to somebody in the heating industry this week who said, we take on a lot of apprentices, but we keep getting new regulations that stop us growing as a company. And it's the same in the broader construction industry. So it's a stat I like to use a lot. When small and medium-sized enterprises built around 40% of homes, we trained more carpenters and bricklayers than we do entire construction apprentices today. SMEs now build only 9% of homes. So it's no surprise that we don't have enough people entering the industry, because the people that train and ultimately retain them are hand to mouth. And unless we enable them, look, and I don't often give governments credit, and I will do for this one, this government, it's the first time I've got a government to do something for SMEs that wasn't just handing some cash. And this Labour government has proposed, it's not implemented yet, what's called a medium-sized site. So like a site between 10 and 49 homes. So basically you'll get treated as though you're building that many homes instead of 1,000 homes in bureaucratic terms. That means those businesses who, remember, train and retain, will actually be able to take on apprentices because they can establish a pipeline of work rather than just hand-to-mouth, no cash flow. It won't necessarily happen, and it might not happen quickly, but at least it's putting us on the right direction. And that government document and that government press release said 8 in 10 construction apprentices are trained by SMEs. It shouldn't have taken me 11 years of my job to get one press release to identify that.
But Rico, sure, they could also do things like the national insurance hike has made it harder to hire and retain. Increasing the minimum wage for the youngest workers might sound like a laudable thing to do, but the evidence is now manifestly clear. People are hiring less young people. Policy has an impact, and we've had some bad policy of late.
Yeah, we have. And post-COVID, we had 12 new taxes added to the construction industry and regulatory changes that added costs. And you go into the politicians, do you not understand the impact this has on businesses? And they say, well, don't worry, it'll be dealt with by the land value, so it'll come off the land value. It's not the way things work. And in many places, as research has shown recently, there is nothing in that land value. So you are absolutely correct. When you add those national insurance costs, when you add that minimum wage, you are effectively pitting somebody that's never had a job against somebody who may have had a job and maybe they've got skills in other departments, but they've chosen construction. So you're taking an opportunity from someone away that could have had that. because you're paying somebody, unfortunately, a lot of money to do a job they can't do. And what people don't talk about is you also have to get another member of staff to handhold them for a short period of time. So you're lowering your productivity, not just on the staff member that's not so great, but because you're taking away from an experienced member of staff. It's an absolute catastrophe. And we need some politicians that understand how businesses work in order to save this neat issue. And unfortunately, Tony Blair doesn't quite get it, and I don't think other politicians do. Speak to employers, they understand.
Rico, here's an idea. How about getting somebody like you into government? We might have half a chance. Rico, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Head of Policy and Market Insight, National Federation of Builders. Top man, thank you very much indeed. Now, breaking news just coming in. And it's good news. The US and Iran have reached a memorandum of understanding